when I arrived at Maple Harbor University 3 days late. My left cheek was still swollen from a scooter accident and 2 thin strips of medical tape crossed. The bruise like badly drawn lightning. My brother, Jungchung, carried my suitcase up the stairs of dormitory 7, looked once inside room
405 and instantly changed color.
On the way back down, he pulled my cap lower over my forehead and muttered, "I do not like speaking badly about girls, but one of your roommates is not normal. Keep your distance." I laughed at him then. Cheng was a married man with a 6-year-old daughter, and the dramatic instincts of someone who sold machine parts but secretly believed he had been born for the stage. He even made me promise to call him if anyone in the dorm seemed too enthusiastic. I rolled my eyes, shoved him toward the elevator, and told him to go home before my sister-in-law accused him of trying to relive college through me. 5 minutes later, I understood that he had not exaggerated at all. The moment I pushed open the door, a girl with long chestnut curls, scarlet lipstick, and the expression of someone inspecting damaged goods looked me up and down and asked, "You are Jiang Suyan, right? Good. Send me your boyfriend's WeChat. Or your brother's." Actually, either works. Tell him not to dream too much. I do not like poor men, but if he behaves, I might chat with him for fun. She said it as casually as if she were asking me to pass the salt. I stood there with one sneaker still outside the threshold, genuinely wondering whether the crash had concussed me harder than I thought. "My boyfriend?" I asked. "The man who brought your luggage up," she said, tapping her manicured nails against her phone. He stared at me for 10 full seconds. Men only look at me like that for one reason. Give me his contact. I will reject him gently. I'm not cruel. She even sighed as if beauty were a civic burden she bore on behalf of the nation. I took a slow breath, looked past her, and found the rest of the dorm frozen in various stages of embarrassment. Then I answered as kindly as I could manage. "That was my brother. He has been married for 7 years. His wife won the city beauty contest before she got tired of being photographed beside idiots. Their daughter can already buy soy sauce by herself. Also, if my brother stared at you for 10 seconds, it was probably because your eyeliner looks like it was applied with a roofing brush." Silence dropped so fast it almost made a sound. The girl's mouth opened and closed. Behind her, one roommate nearly choked on her bottled tea. Another covered her face and bent double with the effort of not laughing. The girl finally drew herself up. "I'm Chin Ruoxi," she said, coldly, as if I should have recognized royalty. "People call me the rose of this floor." Then they
Should check their eyesight, I replied, and stepped
fully into the room. That was when I saw my bed. Or rather, what should have been my bed. The entire mattress was buried under someone else's. Skirts, tights, sweaters, and a frightening amount of scented lace that had no business being aired in public. A pair of socks, stiff with mystery, hung from my bed rail like surrender flags after a dirty war. "Whose junk is this?" I asked. The roommates all looked at Kin Ruoxi. Kin Ruoxi lifted one shoulder. "Mine. I do not do chores. Just move them somewhere." I asked once more, politely enough to satisfy heaven and any cameras that might later review the scene. "Please clear my bed." Ruoxi crossed her arms.
"My
hands are for makeup and piano, not laundry. Besides, I was here first. New girls should learn the rules. I had grown up around a workshop, boxed 3 years in high school, and had exactly 0 spiritual talent for enduring
nonsense."
I grabbed the entire pile in both arms, walked into the hallway that had just been mopped, kicked open the door with my heel, and flung everything out.
Wet.
Tile slapped her precious dresses flat. One bra slid elegantly through a puddle and attached itself to the leg of a cleaning cart. Ruoxi screamed like a princess discovering famine. She ran after the clothes, shoes slapping, while I returned to my now empty bed and set down my backpack. "There," I said. "Much better." A dorm supervisor arrived 2 minutes later, summoned by Ruoxi's shrieking. By then I was already sweating fresh. Ruoxi pointed with a trembling finger and cried that I was a violent lunatic from the countryside. The supervisor, Auntie Zhao, had clearly survived several semesters of Ruoxi. She looked at the swamp of clothing in the hallway, looked at my bruised face, then sighed the sigh of a woman who knew the difference between cause and effect. "Roommates should respect each other," she said, "and personal items do not belong on someone else's bed." Ruoxi sputtered that each of those dresses cost more than my scholarship. Auntie Zhao told her that expensive fabrics still got wet when thrown into water and suggested that perhaps this was a useful lesson. Once the door shut, behind Auntie Zhao, the room finally breathed. A round-faced girl with glasses introduced herself as Yu Qing and immediately handed me a pack of tissues as a gesture of alliance. The quiet girl at the far desk was Shen Yuexi. The one braiding her hair was Li Lu. The last roommate, Tang Feifei, whispered, "You are the first person who has ever answered her back on day 1. I think I love you." I told her not to fall in love too quickly. We had not yet survived our first night. Over instant noodles and awkward laughter, they filled me in. Kin Ruoxi believed with absolute conviction that any man who made eye contact with her was already half in love. She had created separate online groups for admirers, bake-up admirers, future admirers, and men who would regret missing their chance. She edited her photos until her own mother probably needed facial recognition software to identify her. She borrowed things without asking, took compliments that had never been given, and once tried to accept a laptop from an exhausted senior because he had looked at her twice during a presentation. He was checking whether she would unplug the projector, Yu Ching said. She still told everyone it was an intellectual form of flirting. Tang Feifei added that Ruoxi regularly asked the 58-year-old night guard to carry parcels upstairs while calling him uncle, you adore
Me the most.
Li Lu said Ruoxi had once informed a teaching assistant that his refusal to answer her messages was clearly a strategy to make her chase
Him.
he was engaged, Li Lu said. Ruoxi called that
Emotional cowardice.
I learned all this while organizing my desk and trying not to smile too. Obviously, people like Ruoxi thrived on silence. Every roommate before me had chosen peace over conflict, and every compromise had fed her delusion. By 11 that night, she had pulled her curtain closed, but her voice carried through the fabric as she recorded a whispery voice note to someone in one of her pawn groups.
I am so tired, she sighed.
Beauty is exhausting. Every new person who meets me either envies me or desires me. At midnight, my phone buzzed. A stranger had added me to a campus gossip group. The display name was Sunset Over LA. The first thing I saw was my own face bandages, swollen cheek. Cap pulled low, cropped from some angle in the dorm. Beneath it, Ruoxi had typed a tragic essay about how the ugly new roommate had smashed her cosmetics because Ruoxi's admirers accidentally paid more attention to her. Several anonymous boys were already piling on. One said girls with bad faces usually had worse hearts. Another said jealousy made women inhuman.
I
Sat up in bed so fast my pillow fell. Yu Ching, who had apparently added me under a fake account, whispered from the opposite bunk, I thought you should see it before it spread further. I thanked her, cracked my knuckles, and began typing Sunset Over LA. I wrote, with that username and that grammar, your most committed relationship is obviously with public humiliation. Yamotor boy, I wrote to another, your wallet has 13 yuan in it, and your dignity owes interest. To old trainhead I wrote, if wisdom were measured by forehead length, you might have hope, but unfortunately, it requires a brain.
The chat
Exploded. People who had spent years throwing stones from behind fake avatars discovered that stones could come back faster. One boy threatened to deal with
me offline.
I asked whether he planned to arrive on foot or by borrowed bicycle. Another claimed that real beauties never needed to.
Arg.
I replied that true men never needed to use anime profile pictures as emotional support animals. Someone asked who I was. I answered, the person your favorite liar should have met before she learned to type.
Tang Feifei
Laughed into her blanket so hard the bed shook. Ruoxi finally appeared in the chat as Rose Little Queen, her standard username across every platform. She sent a voice message with carefully placed tears. Please stop hurting everyone because you hate me, she said. If you want revenge, target me. Alone. They are only defending me because they care about
me.
That was the moment I knew her vanity was not a
Hobby.
it was religion. I answered in text, amazing.
If 20 men insult one woman, you call
it proved that you are beloved. If one woman answers back, you call it violence. Have you considered taking this logic to a museum? The next morning, Ruoxi dissolved the group. She did. Not apologize, of course. Instead, she claimed she was above petty internet
drama.
When she stepped out to brush her teeth, I stopped her in the doorway. Next time you use my face for content, I said, quietly, I will print your messages and tape them too. Every bathroom mirror in the arts building. Her chin lifted. No one would believe you over me.
I
Smiled. Then let us test your faith in democracy. She said, nothing after that, but I saw her checking her phone. Every 5 minutes. For 3 days, peace lasted. On the 4th, a boy with soft hair and a shy smile waited downstairs carrying breakfast and asked if we could call Yu Ching. He introduced himself as her boyfriend, Lin Beiyu, from the engineering school. Before I could answer, Ruoxi had drifted beside him. Like perfume with legs. You can call me Ruoxi, she said, pinching the straw of the milk carton he offered in thanks. Your hair would look better. Black. Still, I appreciate effort. I like men who know how to present themselves.
The
poor boy blinked like someone caught in academic fraud he had not committed. By the time Yu Ching came downstairs, Ruoxi had somehow transformed a carton of milk and a polite thank you into evidence of destiny. Back upstairs, she announced, your boyfriend is trying very hard not to fall for me. It is obvious. Men become quieter when the attraction is serious. Yu Ching looked at me with a face that silently asked whether murder carried a scholarship penalty.
I
Shook my head. Not murder, I mouthed. Education. That evening, with the cooperation of a second SIM card, a fake profile, and Tang Feifei's legendary catfish instincts, we built a new man. We named him Bo Yunhan. He was, according to his profile, the only son of a
luxury car dealer studying finance abroad back in
town temporarily and too lonely to trust ordinary girls. He had seen Ruoxi in a hallway photo and been struck still by her impossible elegance.
Ruoxi
Took the bait before Tang Feifei had finished choosing his fake watch collection. Within 10 minutes, Ruoxi was calling him someone of quality. Within 1 hour, she had informed us that true high-value men recognize each other instantly, and that all of us should watch and learn. For 2 days, we let the fantasy grow. Bo Yunhan praised her collarbones. Bo Yunhan claimed he had never met a girl whose sorrow looked so expensive. Bo Yunhan said he hated materialistic women, at which point Ruoxi modestly mentioned that she was not attached to brands, although the newest Dior bag had a certain poetic effect on her soul. On the third day, he invited her to meet him under the West Stadium seats at 7 in the evening.
I
have prepared a special gift, he wrote. Do not be late. I want the first sight to belong only to you. The weather forecast predicted rain. Ruoxi wore a red dress anyway. She curled her hair, glued on 3 layers of lashes, and spent an hour taking photos by the window while pretending not to be waiting. Before she left, she turned in the mirror and asked,
"How do I look? Like a lawsuit waiting to happen."
I said. She took it as envy and floated out. We waited exactly 20 minutes before Lilu, armed with binoculars, reported from the curtain that Ruoxi had reached the stadium and was posing under the bleachers for no one. At 7:30, the rain started, first as a polite drizzle, then as a full assault. Bo Yoonhan apologized by message and told her traffic had trapped him, but his gift was hidden beneath the first row of seats in a white box with a silver
ribbon.
Ruoxi ran to find it. She returned to the dorm, nearly soaked through, carrying the box to her chest, like proof that the universe still respected
Hierarchy.
even then. She said, a man who cannot come but still sends something meaningful is far rarer than one who appears empty-handed. All 5 of us stood around
the box.
Ruoxi lifted the lid with shaking fingers. Inside lay a plastic tiara from a party store. 3 pairs of her own stale socks, the lace undergarments she had thrown on my bed the first day, and a note. On it, in Tang Feifei's prettiest handwriting, were the words, "For the queen of delusion, may your fish continue to swim in circles." Ruoxi froze. Her mascara, loosened by rain, began to travel down her cheeks in 2 dark rivers. Shen Yuexi looked at the socks, then at me, and for the first time since I had arrived, actually laughed. Ruoxi spent the next morning destroying evidence. By lunch, screenshots from her rich admirer conversation had vanished. By afternoon, she had rewritten the disaster as a cruel prank by jealous roommates. Unfortunately for her, some people were quicker with saves than she was with deletes. The engineering boy downstairs did not know our part in it, but he had seen Ruoxi waiting in the rain and uploaded a blurry photo to a student forum with the caption, "Who is this campus ghost bride?" Within an hour, several of Ruoxi's former defenders began recognizing her shoes. Humiliation should have sobered her. Instead, it concentrated her malice. A week later, Shen Yuexi discovered that her limited edition tan camera bag was missing. Yuexi never raised her voice. She merely opened her wardrobe, saw the empty shelf, and went still. That frightened me more than anger would have. We searched the room Ruoxi swore she had never touched it. That evening, however, Lilu spotted her in a redasher photo posted by a boy from the law department. The bag was on her shoulder, rain streaked across the leather, and one corner was already warped. Yuexi did not scream. She simply took screenshots, called the boy, and asked him whether he enjoyed assisting theft. The boy, terrified, sent back every message Ruoxi had exchanged with him. She had told him the bag was hers and that the little scratch on the side gave it vintage character. When confronted, Ruoxi crossed her legs and said, "It is just a bag."
You rich girls are so dramatic.
Yuexi looked at her for several seconds and asked one question that made the room colder than any insult could have. "Did you think that because I dislike noise, I would
fear consequences?"
2 days later, a legal notice arrived from Yuexi's family lawyer regarding theft, property damage, and defamation. Ruoxi cried then, truly cried, but only because compensation had numbers attached to it. Her mother came to campus in faux fur and pearls, argued in the hallway that girls should tolerate each other, and was informed by Auntie Zhao that tolerance did not extend to taking someone else's belongings into a storm. The bag was paid for in installments. Ruoxi sold cosmetics, shoes, and half the fake luxury she had accumulated through petty scams. For another week, she sulked under her curtain. Then my scar cream was tampered with. It happened after the stitches from my accident were fully out, and the doctor told me a month of careful treatment would prevent visible marks. One evening, I opened the tube and caught a sharp, unfamiliar smell. Under the medicinal one, the cap had not been twisted back to its usual angle. Ruoxi was on her bed pretending to scroll videos, but her eyes tracked me through the narrow curtain gap. I squeezed a little cream onto a tissue. Instead of my face, the tissue yellowed almost at once, and my skin prickled even from the faint contact. So I put on a show. I gasped, clutched my cheek, and stumbled back against the desk. Tang Feifei, briefed by my glance, played along immediately. "Suyin," she shouted. "Are you allergic?" Ruoxi sat up too quickly and blurted, "Maybe she ate beef." There had been no beef at dinner. All heads turned toward her. I lowered my hand slowly. "Funny," I said. "I never mentioned an allergic reaction." "So how did you know it was not the medicine?" Ruoxi's face emptied. Then she attempted righteous outrage. "You're framing me," I asked her to hand over her moisturizer. She refused. Auntie Zhao was called. Under supervision, we opened Ruoxi's drawer and found a small bottle of industrial skin lightening, concentrate that no student should have owned. She had mixed it into my scar cream after hearing from the girl in the room next door that once my swelling healed, I might actually be beautiful. She wanted my face to blister. Ruoxi insisted it had been an accident and that she had borrowed the wrong tube while trying to help. Tang Feifei snorted so loudly Auntie Zhao nearly smiled. Ruoxi was given an official disciplinary warning and community service in the dorm bathrooms. Cleaning the bathrooms nearly broke her spirit, by which I mean it inconvenienced her for 9 hours. and made her call 3 different male acquaintances to complain that low-quality women were bullying refined ones. But even then, if she had stopped, perhaps the story would have ended in ordinary campus nastiness. Some people, however, mistake every consequence for persecution and every boundary for a declaration of war. Ruoxi needed not only to be admired, she needed witnesses who lost. Once she sensed that no one in our room feared her anymore, admiration was replaced by the desire to wound. Around this time, the annual campus beauty vote began. I did not care. I was busy with design assignments, recovering my attendance after missing training, and trying to keep a B+ average from turning into something better. Ruoxi cared as if it were a constitutional
Referendum.
She bought followers. She bought likes. She paid freshmen with milk tea to vote from alt accounts. Then she discovered she was losing to a girl from the journalism department and panicked. That was when she created a forum thread titled, "Why the so-called beautiful girls on campus are all edited except one." The one, naturally, was Ruoxi. The thread included a secretly taken photo of me from behind, stretched and warped until my legs looked absurdly thick, with the caption, "This is
What envy looks like.
maybe on another day I would have ignored it." But I had already spent months answering her nonsense, and restraint had failed to educate her. So I took a proper picture of myself in daylight, tape removed, cheek healed, hair tied back, and posted it under the thread with one line: camera repaired. Delusions still pending. Within an hour, the vote rankings changed violently. People had expected a scarred, furious gremlin. Instead, they discovered that my mother's old actress genes and my father's ridiculous face had apparently formed a quiet alliance in me. I had never used them as currency because I had been too busy surviving other people's opinions. Now that the bandages were gone, the reactions were immediate and deeply annoying. Several of the same boys who had called me ugly now asked whether my schedule was free this weekend. I told one of them that eyesight improvement was admirable but not enough to replace a personality transplant. Ruoxi did not become less dangerous. After losing the vote, she became less careful. One evening, she came back from the supermarket, carrying flowers and humming. 5 minutes later, she sat on Shen Yuexi's bed and announced, "That law student from before, he is over me, but another one likes me now." Even men with standards eventually surrender.
UXE.
Looked up from her book and said, very mildly, "Please get off my blanket." Ruoxi ignored her. "Your boyfriend's watch is fake, by the way," she added. That was the first time Yuexi's gaze
Sharpened.
For the record, Yuexi's boyfriend Lu Jingchuan was not only real, but the sort of man whose name made student union presidents sit straighter. He had founded a media logistics company before graduating and somehow still found time to bring Yuexi warm tea during exam weeks. He never threw power around on campus. That made what happened next feel even colder. When he heard that Ruoxi had shoved Yuexi during an argument and sent the back of her head into the bed frame, he did not shout. He merely arrived, checked Yuexi's bandage himself, and asked in a voice like black ice, "Does the school know Yuexi unfortunately was kind?" She said the cut was small and she did not want to ruin someone's future over one ugly moment. Ruoxi took that mercy as proof of superiority. "See?" she whispered later, loud enough for all of us to hear. "Your rich little prince won't move unless I allow it. Deep down, men all want my forgiveness." Tang Feifei dropped her spoon. Li Lu closed her textbook with such force the table
shook.
I said nothing, but I remember thinking that when a person mistakes restraint for worship, disaster is never far behind. It arrived on a Tuesday night in October. The air was already turning cold, yet the room felt strangely sealed and heavy when I woke a little past 2. My throat burned. The smell was wrong sweet, chemical, suffocating. The air conditioning unit was still running, but the vents had been blocked from the outside with damp towels. On the floor near the door, something was smoking. Not fire exactly, but thick insecticidal fog pouring from a broken dispenser left under the draft gap. Feifei sat bolt upright, coughing. Lilu stumbled from bed. Yuexi did not wake. I shook Yuexi once, twice, hard enough to frighten myself, but she stayed limp. The door handle would not turn fully. Something heavy had been wedged against it from the outside. There are moments when panic feels almost clean, because it burns away every unnecessary thought. I threw Yuexi's arm over my shoulder, told Ching to wet towels, and kicked the lower hinge side of the door. As hard as I could, pain shot up my leg. The door held. I kicked again. On the third impact, the wedge slipped, the door burst inward, and a body tumbled. With it, Ruoxi had been sitting outside the door. She fell backward with a gasp, hair loose, eyes glittering not with sleep, but with anticipation. Abruptly interrupted. Even through the haze, I understood. She had blocked the door, closed the vents, and left the fumigant running while we slept. Not a prank, not jealousy, not misunderstanding. Intent. Li Lu screamed for help down the corridor. King and I carried Yuexi out, banging on doors until the whole floor woke. Someone called emergency services. Someone else pinned Ruoxi when she tried to crawl away, crying that she had only wanted them to suffer a little. We spent the rest of the night in the hospital. Yuexi recovered after oxygen and observation. The rest of us were treated for smoke inhalation and chemical exposure. My lungs felt lined with sandpaper. Feifei lost her voice for 2 days. Ruoxi, meanwhile, told the police she had been trying to kill mosquitoes. It might have worked on A lazier investigation. Unfortunately for her, campus security found tape, residue on the vent covers, fingerprints on the broken dispenser, and recent search history on her. Phone variations of how long harmful aerosol stayed, concentrated in sealed rooms, whether blocked vents, made people sleep deeper, whether minor poisoning, left lasting evidence. UXC did not ask for mercy this time. Neither did the school. Once the attempted harm crossed from rumor into physical evidence, kindness became
Irrelevant.
Lu Jingchuan did not threaten anyone. He simply hired the best legal team his money could. Reach and advised UXC to document everything Ruoxi had ever done: theft, defamation, tampering, harassment, the stolen bag, the forum lies, witness, accounts from prior incidents. One by one, things Ruoxi had dismissed as small misunderstandings lined up into a pattern so ugly, even she could not cry over it prettily. I saw her. Once at the disciplinary hearing, she still wore lipstick. She still tried to explain that men reacted strongly to her beauty and women resented her for it. She even implied that Lu Jingchuan's determination proved an unhealthy obsession. The room did not laugh. That was worse. People had finally stopped finding her entertaining. They were only tired. When the expulsion notice came, she ripped it in half and claimed she had always been destined for better places anyway. 3 days later, her mother arrived to collect her things in trash bags. No one helped. After Ruoxi left, the room became so quiet it startled us. No audio messages through curtains. No perfume clouds drifting over other people's desks. No wet shoes left in doorways as tests of obedience. The silence felt almost ceremonial, like a building. After renovation, when dust has settled but the walls still remember the hammering, Yu Qing slept an entire night without earplugs for the first time in months. Fei Fei put fairy lights around the window. Li Lu started humming while she studied. Even Yuexi, still formal as ever, bought a small succulent and placed it beside the kettle as if peace needed something living to mark its territory. Weeks later, campus voting reopened under stricter rules. Someone nominated me for the beauty poll as a joke, then as a dare, then, apparently, as a movement. I won by a ridiculous margin which only proved that public taste was as fickle as Ruoxi had always assumed. Boys who once had egg-throwing emojis ready for my face now wrote paragraphs about natural elegance. I replied to none of them. Standing at the top of any silly online ranking did not heal a bruise, pay a bill, or make a night. Guard's back hurt less from carrying packages for a girl who called it love. What did matter was this. The first time the official campus account posted my photo after the design department exhibition, the caption mentioned my work before my face. Jiang Suyin's Stormwater Pavilion prototype wins first place in sustainable housing concept design. Under that line was a photograph of me half turned toward my model, explaining drainage channels with a marker in hand. My hair was tied up. My sleeves were rolled. I looked alive rather than
Ornamental.
that mattered enough to keep the screenshot forever. As for the people who had once mocked me, many of them learned the oldest truth in university life. Reputations built on cheap cruelty collapse faster than badly built furniture. The boys from the old chat disappeared from public comments when screenshots of their insults years surfaced during a campaign on online harassment. The one called Sunset over LA privately apologized and asked whether we could start again as mature adults. I told him maturity would have been useful before he hit send the first time. Old Trainhead blocked me on every platform after I asked whether his forehead had recovered from carrying all that borrowed male solidarity. Sometimes first years still stop me outside the library and ask with enormous eyes whether the stories about dorm 405 are true. I usually tell them only half of it. I say that one semester we learned the difference between patience and surrender, that a person can be loud without being strong, and beautiful without being kind, and pitiful without being innocent. If they ask whether I was scared, I tell the truth. Of course I was. Bravery that never tastes fear is just carelessness. With better marketing, on the anniversary of my move in, my brother came to pick me up for dinner. He leaned against the same dorm entrance and asked
Smugly. So,
was I right about the lunatic? I told him he had undersold it. My sister-in-law laughed so hard she nearly spilled coffee on the steering wheel, and my niece asked whether college was really full of witches. Only some, I said, and most of them are less dangerous than your father's driving. Chang protested. My niece sided.
with me?
Justice in small family forms remained possible. Before we left, Auntie Zhao came out, carrying a stack of registration forms. She looked at me, at my healed face, at the car, and clicked her tongue. You caused trouble the day you arrived, she said, but at least you caused the useful kind. Then she lowered her voice. The girls on this floor sleep better now. That sentence stayed with me longer than any compliment. About my looks, I had not set out to save anyone. I had only refused to kneel. Sometimes that is enough to change the air in a whole room. I often think of how easy it would have been to respond differently that first afternoon. To apologize for needing my own bed. To decide that one semester of discomfort was simpler than conflict. To let the lies pass because campus rumors die quickly. Anyway, they do die quickly. The poison they leave behind does not. Ruoxi had built her kingdom on other people's reluctance to be inconvenient. The first thing I ever truly took from her was not a victory. It was that convenience. Once she discovered we would rather be loud than obedient, her power began to rot. I never saw her again after the hearing, though. Occasionally, someone forwarded a blurry social media post from another city, a filtered face, a sad caption, a line about being misunderstood by women, and overloved by men. Sometimes people change only. Costumes. That stopped being my problem the day she tried to turn our room into a sealed trap. Whatever story she told herself afterward, it no longer had my name in it unless I chose to include it, and I did not. There are freedoms more valuable than revenge. Silence, when freely chosen, is one of them. The semester ended with sunlight on the dormitory windows and all four of us passing our finals.
UXE.
Left for an internship in Shanghai, Lilu finally confessed to the guitarist from Literature Club and returned triumphant with his jacket. Fei Fei started a podcast about absurd campus legends and made our room famous without using real names. Yu Qing and her engineer stopped almost breaking up every other weekend. As for me, I packed my sketchbooks, folded my clothes onto a bed that had remained mine ever since day one, and realized that anger had done something mercy alone could not. It had protected the door. There had been smaller battles too, the kind people forget because they do not end in ambulances. Ruoxi once leaned out the third-floor window and called sweetly to the old parcel guard, Uncle Chen. I'm tired, bring my boxes up for me. He was nearly 60 and limped in cold weather. When Yuqing reminded her of that, Ruoxi tossed her
hair and said, he likes carrying things for me.
Some men need a purpose. I went downstairs, took my own parcel from his hands, and asked loudly whether he also delivered common sense. He laughed so hard he nearly dropped the scanner. Ruoxi did not ask him again while I was around. She also developed a brief obsession with one of our topography professors after he returned her assignment with a note that simply read, interesting visual instinct. By dinner she had informed 2 separate chat groups that mature men were drawn to her depth. The note, she said, contained a loneliness only I could read. The next morning I borrowed the paper, carried it to the professor, and asked whether his loneliness had anything to do with the red correction marks on her kerning. He looked at the note, looked at me, and very dryly added a second line beneath it. This is not flirting. Please adjust the spacing. Even the beauty vote, ridiculous as it was, revealed more than vanity. When the first round of rankings came out, 4 of the top 10 accounts voting for Ruoxi were newly created and all followed each other. Lilu, whose hobby was data forensics when she should have been sleeping, traced the pattern in half an hour. She bought farms, she said, disgusted. Even fake admiration has to be outsourced.
We sent the
Evidence anonymously to the student union.
They
Quietly cleared the fraudulent votes overnight. Ruoxi spent breakfast accusing unseen enemies of fearing her star power. I buttered my toast and suggested that stars which needed receipts might actually be lamps. Some evenings after studio class, the 5 of us would sit on the floor sharing fruit, face masks, and stories from before university. That was how I learned Lilu had changed majors. Against her father's will, how Qing had once hidden under a desk to escape a school bully, how Fei Fei masked loneliness with jokes because silence reminded her of a house where her parents only spoke through slam doors. Uxie did not speak much about herself, but when she did, it mattered. Quiet is not weakness, she said. One night, while peeling an orange in one perfect
spiral.
it only becomes weakness when other people are allowed to define it. Ruoxi, behind her curtain, blasted a breakup song loud enough to suggest she had heard every word. There was one moment before everything collapsed when Ruoxi almost looked human. To me, it was after the legal notice over the stolen bag.
I
Came back from class and found her sitting on the floor between the beds, staring at a pair of shoes she had just listed for sale. Her face was bare. Without contour and lashes, she looked younger, softer, almost ordinary. Do you know what it is? Like she asked without looking up, to walk into a
Room and feel invisible unless you make the room.
Neil. I could have answered many ways. Instead, I said no. I know what it is like to walk into a room and realize the room thinks you should apologize for existing. She looked at me then, but whatever. Fragile honesty had opened her closed again. Later, after the hospital, the police asked each of us for a formal statement. Writing it all down made the months look uglier than they had while we were living them. The dirty clothes on my bed,
The rumors.
the stolen bag, the tampered cream, the shove that split Uxie's scalp, the blocked
Vents.
one act after another, each one easier for her than the last because each previous line had been crossed without ending her story. Auntie Zhao read her own statement twice before signing. I kept telling myself girls fight like this, she said, voice rough. I should have called it what it was sooner. None of us contradicted her. Institutions often prefer small explanations until someone is almost carried out. When the disciplinary office requested evidence of Ruoxi's online lies, Fei Fei produced folders,
not
screenshots.
Folders.
The woman in charge actually blinked and asked whether she had cataloged everything. Of course, Fei Fei said. If a snake keeps shedding skin in your room, eventually you label the skins. There were tough snaps of defamatory posts, saved chat logs, the catfish conversation, forum threads, fake beauty, vote counts, even audio clips of Ruoxi telling one admirer that she only responded because he sounded wealthier than the others. For a full minute, the office was silent except for keyboard taps. Then the woman printed a stack thick, enough to stun cattle. My parents learned about the smoke incident from the local news page before I had the energy to call. My mother arrived with a bag of pears and the expression of someone deciding whether to faint or
Start a lawsuit.
my father, who had trained himself never to overreact because he once worked on ships and considered panic a design flaw, looked at the bruise where the oxygen mask had rubbed my cheek and said, Only, I'm proud you kicked the door. Then he asked the hospital for the bill and paid it before I could.
Arg.
On the drive home afterward, my mother finally burst into tears and called me hot-tempered. She sounded almost grateful. Campus memory is short but not always shallow. In the weeks after Ruoxy's expulsion, girls from other dorms began stopping by our room not to gossip, but to ask practical questions.
What counted?
As evidence, if a roommate stole cosmetics, how do you report online harassment without your name spreading faster than the truth? Is it possible to ask for a room transfer without being branded? Difficult. UXE made a spreadsheet. King compiled complaint procedures. Feifei designed a one-page guide with the title Things That Are Not Just Girl Drama. We printed
20 copies.
They vanished in 2 days. The funniest message I received that semester came from the law student who had once taken Ruoxy to dinner with UXE's stolen bag on her shoulder. He sent a 3-paragraph apology in which he described himself as misled by emotional optics.
I
Replied, "That is the most cowardly phrase ever invented. You were not misled by optics. You were flattered by attention." He thanked me for my honesty as if I had done him a favor. Men who survive beautiful nonsense often mistake correction for intimacy. Ruoxy had not invented that weakness. She had merely industrialized it. As winter turned towards spring, my own face finished healing. The faint line near my cheekbone vanished, except in very harsh light. I stopped thinking about it, yet one afternoon in the design building restroom, I caught 2 freshmen arguing because one insisted my official student portrait had been edited.
No one.
"Looks like that after getting hit by a scooter," she said. I washed my hands and walked out without correcting her. The point was not whether I was pretty.
The
Point was that my face, my scars, my bad temper, my good grades, and my mistakes all belonged to me now. No one else got to choose which parts became the
Story.
That may be why, when the school magazine asked to interview me after the pavilion prototype won first place, I agreed on one condition: they would mention the smoke incident only in relation to the dorm safety campaign we later started, not as lurid
drama.
I was tired of women becoming famous for nearly being harmed. Let the article record that we demanded new vent checks, better corridor cameras, and a simpler reporting channel for harassment. Let it record that the administration finally replaced the broken door mechanisms on 3 floors because one girl refused to stop filing forms. Let usefulness for once outlast spectacle. If there is a moral, perhaps it is simply this: I was never the cruel one for refusing to be arranged around someone else's delusion. A girl who cannot endure being mistaken for an audience does not become vicious when she speaks. She becomes audible. I arrived at Maple Harbor with tape on my face and bruises still blooming. I left with cleaner lungs, sharper friends, a better portfolio, and the reputation of being difficult. Good. Locks are difficult. Fire doors are difficult. Boundaries are difficult. Things that keep danger out usually are. So yes, in the end I did become the campus beauty everyone argued over for one loud and silly week, but the title meant less to me than the first night all 5 of us slept peacefully under one ceiling. Beauty fades, votes reset, and gossip moves on to
Fresher prey.
a room made safe, however, changes the shape of a life. And if anyone still insists that my temper was excessive, I only smile and ask the question that ended many arguments that year: excessive compared to what, your comfort or my survival?